G'day, cave dwellers. All this and more on This Week in Retro.
High-resolution color graphics.
This land of high technology.
The revolution in technology that made the information age possible.
Those kids are not afraid of computers.
Orpheus II Electric Boogaloo.
Chris is in the cave.
And a modern C64 operating system.
All this and more coming up on This Week in Retro. Up-to-date news for out-of-date tech. Well, after our fantastic visit from John last week, our virtual visit and a catch-up with John, look who's in the cave. It's Chris. He's come all the way. The fake Australian has come all the way back to his homeland. We'll talk more a little bit about his visit because I'm so excited to have Chris here today. I've actually made him my story for the show this week. So
I'm honoured. I'm excited to be here. Seriously, it's the other way around. Yeah,
so
really appreciate your time. Yeah,
we've spent the morning with a GoPro, haven't we? Yeah. Despite it just being me and Chris here, we fired the whole cave up just like a public day so we could get the full experience. And we've got some footage of that and we'll chat about that a bit later. What else have I got to tell you about? Monitor stands. I know it's not the most exciting subject, but here's a picture that I've sent to Duncan. Hopefully he can pop it up on the screen. I've made 10 of these, and I've made these because I used to have one as a kid. And I just wanted to recreate that thing because I couldn't find the exact one that I used to have. And I think they look superb. And I made 10, and I think I'm probably going to use all 10 around the cave. The idea was to make some extra to sell, but I'm rapidly using them around the cave. And I'm sure plenty of our listeners and viewers actually had a stand like this, if not exactly like this back in the day. Did you have them, Dave?
I remember those stands. They make me think of BBC Micros. The big, thick metal with a paint on it. Yeah. That's what they look like. They look like BBC Micro stands. I remember the setups you used to have with a monitor sitting on that stand with the two drives underneath it.
Yeah,
But yeah, I've seen the stands. The stands look great. Are they custom cut to exactly suit an Amiga?
They're custom cut exactly for an Amiga 500, but they work around other machines. But if you want to line the floppy drive up perfectly, then the hole in the side is for the 500. And actually it's the second revision. The first one we did, I think it was like 3 mil thick, and it was perfect until about two or 3 months in, and then I just noticed there's a little bit of a sag on it. So I think we've taken it up to 6 mil or something. This is super thick stuff. This is buy once, buy for life. Doubles as a good weapon or a shield as well. So anyway, I'm quickly slipping into a sales pitch here. So let's move on. The other thing that's been exciting this week in the cave has been being able to reveal the arcade. So by the time this show goes out, there should be an episode on RMC where I walk around with Alex, who's running the arcade, and show off the space. I've shown Chris it today and told him about our plans. And everyone can get excited about the fact that an arcade is coming to the mill here.
I've seen you and Richard in scrubbing the arcade and trying to prepare the room and so on. It's going to be great. I mean, Alex seems as if he knows what he's talking about. I've seen behind the scenes pictures of cabinets and so on, and you told me what's coming and so on. So it's going to be fantastic.
It's exciting. Not been without its problems. I mean, Alex today, it's the third time in a week that his van has broken down. The poor guy, he's bought a new clutch for it. Something else he had to buy for it. He spent over £1,000 in the last week, and it's just broken down again with an arcade in the back of it. So hopefully he can get that sorted soon. But the trials and tribulations of trying to open an arcade. We will overcome it. Yeah. How's your week been, Dave?
To be careful with your time. My week's been uneventful. Nothing much has happened at all for me. I'm still playing around with these old PCs, trying to get them all sorted out. The one you see behind me in the floor there is
I see. Yeah, tower.
Yeah, it's the Windows XP one. It's the Core 2 Duo one, which I put a new motherboard in because I wanted to have 2 Velociraptors in RAID 0. So now I've got that running.
I hope you've got that backed up.
No.
Oh, living on the edge.
No, I found out if I get it right, I can install an operating system in like half an hour while I'm sitting next to it, so it's fine. So I'm happy to reinstall them all day long.
Okay. Living on the edge with your striped hard drives. Chris, last time we spoke, we had an update from you in your sick bed.
Yes.
You've made a full recovery.
Yep. As has my mother, who also caught it off me. So not the best of holidays, but it's back on track now. Yes, it's been good, but obviously a lot of things I would have liked to have done, like try and visit some retro shops around the UK and stuff like that. I haven't been able to do, but as you saw, I picked up a heap of Spectrum games. That's great. Also picked up a CD32 very unexpectedly from Chrissy, which are very...
Oh, Chrissy Baps.
Yes. So,
excellent.
Bargain price. The only reason I bought it, because one of those things, I don't need one. But when somebody offers you one at the right price, you go, well, I'm just going to be an idiot if I don't take that and take that back with me. So stuff like that. But I did bring a couple of gifts for yourself as well,
okay.
Neil. So all the way from Australia. These aren't actually from me. These are from Graham from the Commodore Cave.
Oh, okay.
Another
Commodore
YouTuber.
Thank you, Graham. We had Graham on here, didn't we, on the show at one point?
No, we haven't. We will have Graham on the show in the future.
That's right. I knew we were trying to get Graham on the
Oz
show.
Retrocom. That's who we had.
That's right.
Aussie. Yeah, a true Aussie. And Graham is also a true blue, as they say. So get into that. And while Neil gets into that, I bought 3 of these, Dave. There's one of these with your name on it. Because, if you come from another country, you could bring something really interesting, or you could do the tacky tourist gift from the local tourist shop. So obviously it's the latter. So a bottle opener from the Perth Hills, which is the area I live. These are handcrafted, handmade. They're actually quite weighty, actually. So there's one for Neil, one for Duncan, and one for yourself. So there you go.
Thank you very much.
I've got my own Commodore Cave mug. It says Commodore Cave on one side for our audio listeners. It's got his lovely face, and there's a CD32 hiding behind him and some other Commodore things. And there's a slip of paper. It says 10 YouTube years, 2,000 subscribers, 10 questions, and 2 prizes.
There you go.
There you go. I do love a mug. So thank you very much for that. And we've got another one here. There's also mention on the side of the box of the Perth, the PAU group, the Perth Amiga user group.
I'm glad you've mentioned that, actually.
Okay.
Because pretty much everybody from the group says, make sure you say hi to Neil for me. So names that do stand out, Shane, who lives very close to me, Nick, Matt, Dave, to name a few, but basically anybody in the Perth Amiga users group is a huge fan of your work.
Shane, Nick.
They're very
Matt,
jealous.
Nick or Nick, was it?
Nick,
Matt, Dave, Perth Amiga group. Hello, and thank you so much. Hello back to you. The second box is another Commodore Cave mug. So I've got 2 Commodore. I can double fist with the Commodore Cave there with my coffee. Thank you very much. And this is a real tourist present. This is perfect.
It's actually very
weighty.
You could throw that at somebody.
This is a bottle opener.
Could I ask you?
Go on.
Can I ask you to post mine to me the next time you're sending me something?
Yeah, of
Please.
course. Yeah. Perth Hills, Western Australia bottle opener.
There you go. And they're handcrafted.
Lovely.
So they're all unique, except all the ones I bought are exactly the same.
With a little magnet, stick that on the fridge when I'm ready for a cold one.
Yeah.
Lovely. Well, thank you very much. And we'll talk more about Chris's visit here in a little bit later today in the story that we've got lined up. But I think we should probably get stuck into the news. What do you think, Dave, with your first story?
Yeah, let's go. So, first story. Last month, we talked about the launch of a new AGIMA Soundcard, which is the MK8330 from Marmaze and Karopi. It's a very competent DOS and Windows kind of 95, 98 card that ticks most of the boxes. It does sound great, and it's fairly affordable, and I bought one. It's not the first card that these guys have made. They also made a card that came out 2 years ago called the Orpheus. And Orpheus is a Greek bard who travelled with Jason and the Argonauts. And I absolutely loved the stop-motion skeletons from the film as a kid. Do you remember that?
Heck yeah.
Oh, yeah. Every Christmas it was on, or Boxing Day, wasn't it? And
it seemed to go forever
it's fantastic.
as well.
The older you got, the more obviously janky that animation was, or out of date it looked. But it still, it still gave you the creeps when you saw those skeletons on the cliff tops. Yeah.
Well, I looked, I went down a little bit of a rabbit hole, looked at YouTube, and someone has improved the animations for it and turned it into 120 frames a second animation, so you can see a YouTube video of these skeletons looking smooth. And I don't even know if it's any better. There was something about the stop motion movement of the skeletons that seemed unnatural that helped. Anyway, I don't think the card has much to do with these at all. Now, the original card could have been described as the ultimate retro sound card. And if you look back at your video, Neil, because you reviewed it 2 years ago, you can see that you were very impressed with it.
Very feature-rich card. It does everything you wanted. There's a lot on there. Wasn't cheap, though, but
no,
feature-rich. Yeah.
So the original card is three things together. It's a Crystal CS4237B, which gives you Sound Blaster, Sound Blaster Pro, and Windows Sound System. And it also includes a real Yamaha OPL3. Now, that's the proper Sound Blaster synth sound that so many of us grew up with before Creative went cheap and tried to cut corners with emulation and their Viber chips, and then even worse, the software drivers. Now, in the earlier days of DOS gaming, the pinnacle of music, and we've said this before, is the MT32 synthesizer from Roland. And these days we do have the amazing project from Dale or Dopefish, the MT32 Pi, which does the MT32 as well as later General MIDI. So that's your Monkey Island, your Loom, King's Quest 4 and other Sierra games of that vintage, Lands of Lore, X-Wing, Ultima 6, etc. And many of these games relied on something called intelligent mode, which you didn't get on a Sound Blaster or compatible MIDI card. Intelligent mode is a way of communicating with the MT32 to make adjustments. Roland produced the card that you needed to do that, a 401, but they're wildly expensive now. If you can even find one, they're hundreds and hundreds of pounds. Before Karopi and Marmies made the Orpheus, they made a card called the PC MIDI, which is a full intelligent MIDI ISA card. And with it, you can get the MT32 sound from a PC sounding just perfect. And that's the last thing that was included in the Orpheus. So you have the Sound Blaster, Sound Blaster Pro, and Windows Sound System, and on top of that, a real OPL3, and finally, an MPU 401. So
you do need that MPU 401. I mean, do you remember the Amstrad Mega PC that I upgraded with the Mega card, the modern Mega card?
Yeah.
Well, I hooked up an MT32 to that, and it was just off. It worked, but it was just off. You get bum notes and strange instruments playing. And then an upgrade was released, MIDI card with MPU 401 was released to go on top of the Mega card. As soon as I put that in, everything just fell into place. And it's one of the showpieces here when people come. I'll fire up Monkey Island. It will come out of that MT32 and it sounds fantastic. So, but it all hinges on that MPU 401. It's really important. Yeah.
So I have an Orpheus as well. It's great. It's fantastic, but they've gone better than the Orpheus. They've just announced the Orpheus II. But before I go on to explain the differences, what about the Orpheus, Neil? Is it in the cave?
Oh, man. The Orpheus II. I thought we'd got past the need to upgrade everything and keep up with the times as retro lovers.
It's
and now
obsolete.
Now they're upgrading the Orpheus to the Orpheus II. How am I supposed to keep up? The Orpheus is still very much here. It's in the compact Pentium Tower PC that I've got here. Which is out for people to play on. They can play on that one. There's SimCity 2000, Theme Hospital, Carmageddon, all that kind of era of games on there. And it's as impressive today as it was when I reviewed it. I'm very, very happy with that card. It really is great, yeah.
Yeah, I need to find some more time to play games on it. I spend far too much time tinkering. So the Orpheus 2 has some improvements to the implementation. You can now use the OPL3 in Windows thanks to some hardware changes that allow the OPL3 to be detected as an OPL3, which was something that never happened with the original Crystal cards. But the main thing is an amazing addition to it. A full Gravis ultrasound has been integrated into the card. So it's the Gravis ultrasound plug and play. That's the later Gravis card, not the classic, although they are fully compatible. They've added the whole card to the Orpheus through new old stock AMD interwave chips, which is the chip that's used in the plug and play Gravis. So it's the original chip, and that means you can do everything that a Gus card can do. So it means you could have the imperfect MIDI implementation and the janky driver based Sound Blaster sound if you wanted to. I mean, it's there, but we don't want that. We've got that through the Orpheus already through the other parts. But what it does add is real Gravis ultrasound support, so native support for the games that did it, and of course the demos. And it even has a sim slot, so you can add memory up to 16 megabytes into the card. It's a big card too, and I like the ISA card.
So that memory would be used for the wavetable to add more instruments for the Gus, so you can make it sound. The standard sound bank I think is 1 megabyte, but you can have up to a 16 megabyte one in there, so you can enhance it. But the Gravis ultrasound, the Gravis is, we've talked about the Gravis before. It's the there was that other project we talked about recently, wasn't there? Where the Pigus, that's it, that's the one. But the thing that we talked about with the Pigus, and a great project it is, and that will give you an ultrasound card. But we talked about the shortcomings of ultrasound, as you touched on there, which is that it did do Sound Blaster compatibility, but it was all through a memory resident software driver, which wasn't great. So here you've got the best of both worlds. You've got, you can drop into Sound Blaster mode if you want, or you can go to Gus or whatever. That's fantastic. Yeah. God, I need it.
As far as I understand, if you're using this card in DOS, which is the best place to use it, if you're using this card in DOS, you can have batch files set up to configure the card and so on before it goes into games, so that you do get exactly what you want from the card. So I think it's going to be perfect, and I'm going to order one, even though I know it's going to be expensive. Now, Chris, I know that you were tempted by the MK8330 card. What do you think about this one?
Yeah, it sounds interesting. I mean, the reason why I was tempted by the other one is because it was fairly cheap, compared to buying certain other cards. And the more these sort of modern recreations cost less than chasing the original hardware, it just makes sense. The card sits inside a machine. It's not like you're going to look at the color of the PCB and the original logo. It doesn't matter to me. So recreations are great. But for me, it does come down to price. I do like to do this hobby on a budget. So, what's this thing going to cost? But the more you've just explained it, and I've listened to you both chatting about it, it does sound almost like one card to rule them all. So even if it is more expensive, then that kind of pays for itself. So, but what's it going to cost, I guess, is my question.
Yeah, I'm not sure if I'd call Keropi Sauron, but one card to rule them all. It's not going to be cheap. It's not going to be cheap at all. It's definitely the most full-featured sound card you can get. In fact, the original Orpheus was probably the most full-featured sound card you get, and this one's gone a lot further.
Dave,
you can find out more information.
Sorry to interrupt, Dave, but none of this is FPGA-based, is it, on this card?
No.
Yeah,
it's all real.
Wow.
The crystal part includes the real OPL3, and it's the AMD Interwave, so that the whole thing is authentic. I don't know if there's anything left for them to do as far as real sound cards are concerned, and once the chips run out, they simply can't make them unless they find a new box of new old stock chips. So it may be that FPGA is eventually where things go.
Well, tell us the price on this thing, and I'll just give you a few more thoughts on that. Go on. How much is this?
It's not sure yet. It depends on component cost. The old components are bought in, but modern components are the same as everything now. It's difficult to get, but they're thinking between 300 and 350 euros. So not cheap at all, I'm afraid.
Yeah, that's pretty premium. Yeah, I can't help but think longer term that all of these things are going to shift to FPGA, and I'm looking forward to that. But there's no availability of those chips at the moment, so that's why it's not happening. Nope. So this is the only way you're going to get this kind of thing at the moment, unless you just happen to have a warehouse of FPGA chips you've been hanging on to, or you go down the Pi route. Again, they're in short supply now as well. So 300 to 350. I would put that in the category of very dedicated retro collector. And those who buy it, I'm sure they're going to be happy with it, but it's not an impulse decision for the casual Amiga Mini type collector.
Yeah. I think unlike the rest of the sound card purchases you might make at that price, this is by far the most usable one. I mean, if you buy an Adlib Gold, which is even more expensive, it's a very niche card. If you buy an original Gravis ultrasound of some kind, then it's great, but only in certain circumstances. And even if you try and get a sound blaster, then Sound Blaster's got problems with MIDI implementation and hanging notes and all the rest of it, and clipping and so on. So I think this is the answer. At least for the money that you pay, you get your money's worth. But it's a lot of money to pay. None of this is necessary. It can all be done in emulation.
a big pro of the Orpheus, I remember from the review, is that the software and the drivers that are written for it just hang so nicely off of it. You know, you're not having to use jumpers and reset the machine to get it into the mode you want or anything. You just type in a command line and it does exactly what you need it to. You stick something in the auto exec to initialize it, you know, like you did with many of the old cards, but you're not hunting around for some specific old driver that you just can't find to get your card working. It all just works nicely. So yeah, you pay a premium, but you get a premium experience out of these things. And yeah, looking forward to seeing some reviews on it.
Keep an eye on their website, pcmidi.eu. They're expecting to release in late autumn or winter. Again, it depends on components and so on. There's the new components for it are difficult to obtain, and there's prices going up and so on. And it'll only be on sale while the stock of the AMD chips last. So once they're gone, they can't make any more chips. So keep an eye on the website for more info.
So this isn't really a story, but it is kind of a big deal for us, which is that Chris has returned to his native England to see family. And he's taken some time out to visit the cave, having come from his family over at the Royal Tunbridge Wells.
That's right, correct. Royal, yes.
And
Don't forget the Royal.
It wasn't without drama, of course, because you know, he had to spend part of his trip isolating, and we saw a video of that last week. But now he's out of isolation and he's back here with us. Now, for those watching on video, and we will try to describe this on the audio-only listeners for them as well, I grabbed a camera, and Chris and I walked around the cave, which hopefully will be up on the screen now. Now, this isn't an advert for the cave, I must say. I'm just genuinely excited to have Chris here and to be able to show him around and things like that. And you can see him here. You started off by playing on some of the systems in the hands-on area. Master System, was it? You were having
No, jumped on the SNES first of all. F-Zero. Yeah, great game. One of the games that made me want a SNES back in the day, which is why I bought one. Mm-hmm. And then I believe I jumped onto Kung Fu Master, mainly because that jumped out at me on your FPGA-based arcade cab, because I recently played the Spectrum version again for the first time in goodness knows how many decades. And I'd never played the arcade port, so that was cool. Much easier on the arcade, I found, actually.
Yeah. And then we worked our way down the systems. You said something not very complimentary about the Atari ST as we passed it.
I think I waved my hand at it.
Oh, shocking. Absolutely shocking, Dave. Had a little go on IndyCar racing with the steering wheel and the pedals.
That was good fun. Yeah.
Yeah. And then it wasn't bad at that game. I mean, he was doing 45 miles an hour in fifth gear.
I didn't know what the speed limit was.
Just sort of pootling around the track, but okay, it's fine. And then a game of Galaxian.
Yeah,
didn't do too badly on that. Well, you were doing very well until I said you're not doing badly.
And then I just lost all my lives.
Yeah. And then we went into the retro recreated shop and we did some shopping, Dave, and we've got some of the things we bought here. So you scanned the 8-bit section first of all, didn't you?
I did. I had a quick look through, and the game I picked up from there is not so much because this is actually the Spectrum version of Echelon.
I'll hold that up to the camera. Tell us why you picked this one out.
Because I actually had the Amiga version, and I don't know, it might be a blurred memory, but I swear the box was slightly bigger for the Amiga version. That might be wrong, but it is a game that I bought for the Amiga back in the day from Megabytes, purely on the box art.
I don't think Amiga owners bought games.
Watch it. But purely on the box art. One of those, purchasing, you've got your pocket money, you're going to buy a game, you're not sure what it was. And just that box art just stood out to me, and it was like, got to have it.
Cool spaceship. It looks like a wireframe.
It is
elite style game. Is
sort
it?
of a bit of buyer's regret once I got it back. But you had to spend time with it and sort of get into it. In all honesty, it's that long ago. I haven't played it since. I need to have another poke at it.
Right.
But it was quite.
So that
hard
went
to
in
get
our
into.
shopping basket.
Yep.
And then you picked out another game which I haven't actually played, which is Requiem Avenging Angel.
Certainly did pick out some niche titles. So again, I think I've mentioned this in previous episodes, but it's an FPS. It's sort of got a sort of biblical undertone to it, if you like, because you're playing an avenging angel. But it has, I tout it as being the first game to feature bullet time, because one of the powers that you develop is the ability to slow down time, which you, of course, use to dodge bullets and stuff. And it does it really well. And it did that, I think, as a full year before Max Payne did bullet time.
It's 1999 on the back of the box, yeah?
Yeah. Great, really underrated first-person shooter. I actually really like that game and played that through to completion back in the day on the PC. really cool.
3DFX support.
And
We
then
like that.
I couldn't choose another game, so I actually went for a peripheral, and I went for the best joystick ever made.
The Zip Stick.
Absolutely. And I call it that because it's the only joystick I failed to break back in the day.
You get a thumbs up from Dave.
I had one as well. Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you know a funny thing about the Zip Stick? There was an auction on eBay finishing. There was two finishing at almost the same time. One was for 2 Zip Sticks and one was for a single Zip Stick. So I ended up buying 3 Zip Sticks on eBay a couple of years ago. I had the Zip Stick for my... I don't know if I had it for the CPC, but I certainly had it for the ST. And like you said, it was the only one that had proper micro switches on it. The previous to that, I had the Cheetah ones that had these little metal blisters.
Yeah.
And they would go on you, and the joystick that goes in the bin if one of those goes.
Yeah.
So the Zip Stick was great. It wasn't trying to emulate a fighter pilot stick for a digital joystick, which was useless. So the great form factor. But I got these 3 on eBay, and they arrived. They all have different micro switches inside.
Oh, really?
There isn't one Zip Stick that's the real authentic Zip Stick we all had. It was just better than the rubbish that we were used to. Yeah. And I've said before the arcader joystick, which is
that's what I go for now.
I'm holding up here.
Yeah.
Which is it's like a Zip Stick. It's more like a Competition Pro, but the Competition Pro and the Zip Stick are very similar.
Yeah.
It's a short throw arcade style stick. Mine's in Atari ST colours to match the ST, but I think it's better than the old ones. I think perhaps the nostalgic memory of these sticks is better than they actually are.
Yeah, I agree.
Having said that, the Zip Stick itself is fine. There's nothing wrong with it certainly compared to a Cheetah.
The Competition Pro, when you open it up, it's just got arcade micro switches in there, so you can very easily service them and make them feel like new.
Yeah.
But yeah, I like on the side of the box it says it comes with a 12-month guarantee and it's 90% British made. So where the other 10% comes from, I don't know, but it's 90% British.
Which part is not British? I didn't realise it was British, actually.
By volume or by weight?
I don't know.
By price?
Yeah, must be all the mouldings. While we were in the shop, Dave, I couldn't go shopping and not pick you up a gift, so I picked this for you.
I know what that is.
I got you a copy of X-Wing. There you go.
Oh, yeah. I'm always happy playing that. It's such a good game.
Yeah, 1992. That's when this one was. Was this before X-Wing versus TIE Fighter? Wasn't it?
The first one.
Yeah, so X-Wing, then TIE Fighter, and then X-Wing versus TIE Fighter. That game, the reason why that game is so good is because if you're anything like a Star Wars fan, if you enjoy the film, it really immerses you in the Star Wars thing. There's little cut scenes, there's speech, there's sound, you get the music going on. It's a great combat. I can't say flight simulator. It's not really. It's a great combat flying game, but the whole Star Wars thing makes it.
Oh yeah, all the music and all the characters. It says on the front, it's a space combat simulator.
Yeah, it's so good. It's so good. I can't see if it says you can play it with mouse, Dave. The writing's
I
too
have.
small.
I have the final answer to this. I have the final answer. So, I said that what the boxes told me, and that's what I believed. I believed the boxes. It turns out that you could use a mouse in TIE Fighter, but not in the Windows re-release of it. But it said in the box you couldn't. And when I got X-Wing, I struggled with the mouse. So I bought myself a Thrustmaster, which was a joystick, not anything else, if you're not aware. So I bought myself a Thrustmaster. And by the time TIE Fighter came along, I had the Thrustmaster. It said in the box you needed to use a joystick. I never tried using the mouse, so I assumed the box was not lying to me. But it was a lie.
It was a lie. And we're 86 shows into this podcast. We should be past the Thrustmaster giggling stage. But
Never.
No, it's not going to happen.
Always a joystick gag.
Speaking of space combat simulators, a slightly different one, Wing Commander. Wing Commander 3 is there's a great version of that on the 3DO. And I didn't know this existed until I was browsing eBay this week, but I picked up an analog flight stick for the 3DO. So that's going to be fun to experiment with when it arrives. Cool. I don't know what other games I might actually be able to play with it on an analog stick on the 3DO, but we'll soon find out. Yeah. So we had fun in the retro shop, and then we came out and Chris had a browse through the magazines, and he picked out a magazine.
It was hard. I was looking through the single user ones to try and... It is. It's actually... No, it's Amiga format. Which issue is that? Issue 23, I believe.
It is from
And
June 1991.
I mainly picked that one out because it actually has the cover discs attached, which is quite nice to actually pair those up. Yep, 2 of them, and one of them is for 3D construction kit, which I remember having the demo from Amiga format and playing with
Is that the
as much as
Freescape
it would
one?
let me. Yeah, Freescape. Yeah.
Yeah.
And then that being part of the sort of obsession with being able to create my own stuff that led me to purchasing the full version of that. So demos do work, and then later used it on the PC as well.
Something I've just remembered something. Sorry, we've talked a few times about the game that you were making for Rich.
Yeah, that was with
Rich
Shoot 'em Up construction kit.
Yeah, Rich showed me a picture of that. It looks great. He's delighted.
Did he show you a picture of the back of the box?
No.
He hasn't mentioned it to me, and I'm not sure if he's noticed what I did. Let's just say there's a screenshot for the Amiga, and of course, what did you have back in the day? You had screenshots for other systems, so I might have also mocked up a screenshot for the Atari ST, which is just massive pixels. It looks really bad. So there isn't actually an ST version. I just wanted to have a bit of fun. So yeah, nice. That's on the back of the box. Sorry, Dave.
Well, if you paid £3.95 for this magazine back in June 91, which I would have done, I bought this every
2
month
discs?
religiously.
Easy.
2 discs, Balance of Power, a complete £24.99 game. I seem to remember enjoying that Risk type game.
Yeah.
And then also, I don't remember this, but on the other disc it says it has a utility called Hack Trick 60 Hertz, and it says play any game 10% faster.
Ugh.
I don't remember trying that. Might have to break open the cover disc.
I was looking into that on the ST, and the ST, many old machines, you had a PAL version and an NTSC. The ST doesn't have that. Is set by the ROMs. You change the ROM and you change the hertz, and then most of the cracked rows you press 0 to change between them. So maybe the Amiga was the same. Were there NTSC Amigas that were hardware different, or was it just a firmware ROM setting?
You can boot and change in the setting NTSC and PAL, but I don't know if it does everything. Apparently it doesn't. It's not full.
Yeah, hardware, the Crystal would have been running at a different frequency to get everything running nicely at NTSC. So, for example, if you import an Amiga 1000, you can rip it open and do a mod to change it to PAL, true PAL 50 hertz. Whether or not you'd want to do that or not, I don't know. But if you could switch between the two, that's nice. As you say, you can hold down the mouse buttons. But maybe if a listener can tell us for sure if that does every part of it, because I
don't think it does.
No.
I think it might just be the screen resolution or something, rather than the inferior screen resolution it changes it to if you go NTSC.
So there we go. We had a look at the magazines. We also had a game of pool in the rec room.
You are going to mention the game of pool,
right? So I'd like some of our Australian listeners to clear something up, because we had a game of pool, and Chris tells me
cheating.
Chris tells me that if you play pool and if you lose in such a way that you haven't potted a single ball, in Australia the rule is you have to drop your trousers and dance all the way around the table.
Correct.
Now, is this true, or did Chris just want me to drop my trousers?
Well, you didn't lose in that way, Neil.
But you were perhaps hoping that I would.
No, I believe you me. I would have wavered. It's a thing. I promise you, it's a thing. And when I was told it, I thought, no, they're pulling my leg, until I saw it happen in a pub. And from that day
drop
forward,
your trousers, you can pull more than your leg.
Yeah, if I ever played pool in a pub from that day forward, I'm not even joking here, I would be nervous as anything until I potted my first ball, and then I could relax into the game. That first ball was critical. I just wanted to know I could keep my pants.
all that I remember up here is just, we called it a granny, and that's it.
A granny.
It's just a granny, yeah.
Okay, yeah.
We granny is failing to pot any balls.
Yeah, we called it a Dawson,
what?
but that was very local to a group of friends, and we only saw one guy that was that bad. And his name was Mick Dawson, and therefore we just called it being Dawsoned, is what it was.
Had a game of pool.
Sorry, Nick.
And then we had
a granny.
And then we had a head-to-head on GoldenEye on the N64, which, as you've heard in previous shows, Chris used to play an awful lot with his housemates. And I think I beat you.
Yeah, you did. Yeah, you did.
You think?
Did we mention who won, Paul? Yeah, we did. I did win the pool game, yeah.
So then Chris had to drop his trousers and dance around the N64.
I did try slapping him to death. I got confused. It's Natalia. Nikki usually plays as Natalia. I didn't know what was going on.
So that was our morning.
Things.
Yeah.
Two things I'd suggest you do this afternoon once we're finished. Get on the Vectrex. You must play the Vectrex, even just for a few minutes. The Vectrex is incredible. There's nothing else like the screen.
Already done.
And have you? Oh, great. Yeah. What are you playing on it?
Well,
Mark Fixie stuff was telling me there's more stuff for it now.
Yeah, so we've got this cartridge for the Vectrex called Vec Fever, and what it does is it runs the original Vector arcade games through the Vectrex. So you're not playing Vectrex games, you're playing the actual arcade ROMs of Star Wars, of Tempest. And I've got some custom controllers to go with it as well. It's just, it takes it up to the next level again. So
I was playing Star Wars on it, and that was quite a trippy experience to be playing Star Wars arcade on a Vectrex. It was really weird. Yeah.
The screen's just incredible. The other thing I would suggest you do is sit in front of the big PVM and play a couple of 2-player games with Neil on the Mister. It's great.
I need to try out the Mister, actually. Yeah.
Seen the print room yet? Seen the print farm?
Yeah, I went around the print room. Went to see where the arcade space is going to be as well. And really cool. I played some Time Crisis as well, didn't we?
Yeah, play some Time Crisis with the light gun. Yeah.
And Outrun. I discovered I'm as bad at Outrun as I ever was, even though it's one of my favourite games of all time. Halfway through level 2, that's it.
There you go. So that's been our morning. We'll go and grab some lunch after this at the local cafe and then play some more games, I expect. So there you go. It's a bit of a different story, but we couldn't not talk about the experience of having Chris come to visit. And no doubt we'll have another update for you again next week about what we did with our afternoon.
And I must say, I just really appreciate your time, Neil, because I know you've been flat out 8 days straight. And so to still open up the cave, let me wander around, really appreciated.
Yeah. My pleasure. So that's This Week in Chris. Let's move on to our next story.
For our next story, and before I go on to that, I should have said that the last story, that Orpheus, was submitted by Control-Alt-Reese, based on an article on retro RGB written by Vanacera. So, a new operating system for Commodore 64 adds modern features, submitted by Pajako 6502. Now, either he was born on the 65th of February, or he's talking about the MOS 6502 CPU, which was on the C64 and the Apple II, the BBC, the Atari 2600, and various other Ataris, the NES, and loads of other systems. But it's the C64 that we're talking about today. There's an article from Hackaday which discusses a new operating system for the C64, which links to a video. And it's called C64 OS, so it's not very inventive. And the article says it squeezes everything it can out of the 8-bit processor and 64 kilobytes of memory. And it looks to me like it's right. Switchable worktop spaces, windows, icons, drop-down menus, revamped file system as well. It's from Gregory Naku. Well, I've pronounced his name incorrectly. I do apologise for that, I'm sure. And he started the project in 2016. And if you watch his presentation, it starts with an app launcher and he shows you just how customizable it is. So for those of you who are listening, and I imagine Duncan will have some of this up on the screen, I'd like to think about a low-resolution version of Windows 3, but with ASCII instead of graphics, and that's probably what's the best way to describe it. What I had in the back of my mind when I watched the video was how compatible it was. I wanted to find out if this would be a great way to run a Commodore 64, because I do have a Commodore 64, which I need to solder up because I bought the replacement motherboard, the 60 clone from Rob Taylor. I want to know if this is the answer to the C64 for me. Is it going to be a great way to set up my C64 so that I can access games, etc.? The video didn't really mention games at all. I guess it's a little bit myopic of me because there's plenty of other things to do on the C64, and all I can think about is games. But the reason I want to know is that on an Amiga or an Atari ST, you can have things set up with PP disk images with an ultra Satan, so you can have a better experience. I think the Amiga does it with WHD load games. So everything's patched up. Some games have, on the ST, it's Game X, where you can take memory snapshots. Things are fixed for different configurations. Things are different memory amounts, different operating system versions, etc. And things work as a result. So I'm wondering, is this going to be the way that the C64 goes down there with this operating system? And I'm really off on a tangent because the video didn't talk about that at all, but that's what I was thinking about, because I'm not really into using old productivity software, particularly in 8-bits.
Certainly on a C64. Who's using a C64 to do productivity? I guess the main productivity people would do on a C64 in the modern day is programming games.
Yeah. Now, Chris, I know your main thing is the Amiga. I think you've mentioned that once or twice. So how do you run your Amiga? Do you have more enhancements to the operating system? Do you have a launch system to make things easier, or are you a purist? Do you like it to be like it was in 1990?
Yeah, it's a good question, actually. So obviously I've got two main Amigas at the moment, the A500, which doesn't have a hard drive. So the question doesn't really come into play for that one. I've got the original Workbench 1.3 discs that came with the box set. And of course, I've done the correct thing that it tells you to do, which is to make a backup copy. And the only enhancement, if you want to call it that, is I've tinkered with the colours, made it reds and blacks and greys and stuff, and so it's all moody. But other than that, and same, I mean, in context of what we're talking about with cover discs, and often you get Workbench hacks and stuff like that on cover discs. I never bothered with them. I don't know, never played with adding to Workbench and making it better on the A500, mainly because of not having a hard disk. There's not really any point. The A1200 that I've got, that came with a already fully loaded compact flash card. But it did come with, because obviously there's modern operating systems for the Amiga, as we all know, and you have to upgrade the ROMs and stuff. But the machine has the correct ROMs because it's a Commodore machine, not an SCOM machine. So it's the Kickstart 3.0 ROMs, and it has the Workbench 3.0 loaded. But it does have some Workbench enhancements preloaded as well.
3.0 is not the version it came with. Is that afterwards?
No, 3.0 for the A1200 is the correct one for the Commodore one. Right. It was 3.1 on the SCOM machines. But it does have some extra menus and stuff that are not standard to Workbench. So what I also have, I've purchased a fresh compact flash card and a full set of original discs from Marvin Drugsma. So because my intention is I'm not going to get rid of the compact flash card that's already in it, because it's got so much cool stuff on. It would take me ages to recreate that image. So I'll keep that, but I do want to go through the process of setting it up as standard, how it should have been out of the box, and just experience Workbench 3 in that way. The one thing I would add back onto it, though, because I just think you have to have it in the modern day, and that's WHD load, as you've already mentioned. Just fantastic way of installing games that weren't hard drive installable and enhancing them so that they work better on faster machines.
Yeah, I talk about this quite often, but I really struggle with a flash card or even an emulator with just a great big list of games, all the games you could have for a system. I really struggle with that. I think it makes everything feel a bit thin and transient, and you flick between games, you don't look there. So I like the idea of intentionally putting the game onto the system that I want. So copying the WHD load file across, or the PP game across on the ST, or creating the disc for the CPC or the C64 or something like that. So I want to do it that way. I don't maybe not quite get down to exactly the way it used to be. I want some kind of corners smoothed off, but I don't like just the whole big list of games. I think that takes a little bit away from it.
It makes it Neil, too easy. Sorry, can I just... It makes it too easy. It was the chase back in the day. What game did I want to buy? Then I'd dedicate 3 months to playing it because there was my pocket money. Whereas when you've got 1,000 games on a compact flash card, it's too easy. But swings and roundabouts, as a content creator, and if I'm in a high score challenge from a group... then it's great to just go, well, it's probably on the compact flash card. So there's sort of two sides to it. Yeah.
I know that my friend Pillock, I think it's all of our friends Pillock, he was telling me yesterday that if he's setting up an Amiga, he'll copy across a gigabyte of games onto it and not play any of them. Yeah. But funny enough, when he created a disc for Lemmings, he sat down and played it for an hour.
Of course.
it makes a difference. Now, Neil, you've got lots of systems in the cave. Do you try to use the modern OS enhancements to make things more easier or comfortable, or do you think it detracts from the original experience for cave visitors?
Well, yes and no, because it's very important for people that come here that they experience what they remember. So they want that authentic experience. However, there are enhancements that make life a lot easier for me as well as for them when they come here. So, for example, on the Amiga 600, I'll stick on Tiny Launcher so that as soon as Workbench loads, that auto starts and you just get a list of games. They use the joystick, they hit the fire button and a game runs. So they don't need to be, trawling through folders or, even see Workbench. They can, if they want, they can hit escape and drop back to the Workbench to see that and open up some utilities, open up the say program or whatever they want to do. So for convenience, I do use that. For me personally, though, on the software side, I'm perfectly happy with the blues and the whites and the oranges of Workbench 1.3. I don't even customize it to sexy colors like Chris said he likes to do on his. I just like that original default colors. Yes, give me more RAM and a compact flash card and maybe a faster CPU just so that I can speed things along and use WHD load and drop out of the game and load another game without resetting the whole machine. But even the tank mouse, I'm happy with the tank mouse and that, because I'm never sitting down and using these machines to be productive. I'm using them for a quick blast of nostalgia. So that's all important to me. I don't want to think, whoa, it's 2022 and look at what I can make an Amiga do. I can make it look really modern on the surface. I want to be thinking, man, I would be so excited if I had this in 1990. And it's realistically possible that I could have had this if I had a great big pot of money to buy all the upgrades I needed. This was a thing back then. It was just out of my reach financially. So that's how I like things to be. And we're talking about some different things here, because in the C64 example you're talking about a modern OS that's been made for it that is probably like nothing else that we could have had back in the day on the C64, multi-windows and things like that. We just had the ready prompt. Yes, okay, on a 1 to 8, you might have got CPM for it and things like that, but this is a very modern thing. Whereas on the Amiga, Workbench was a thing from day one. So you could tweak that. And even through the PC days, I very quickly got fatigued with trying to make Windows look different and trying to add lots of add-ons on. For decades now, I've always been a default kind of a guy.
Yeah.
Keep my Workbench, keep my desktop clear, keep it simple. I'm even a Luddite now to the point where I use classic shell to keep the start menu how I like it and not the modern Windows-based start, the Windows start menus that come with it, which contradicts what I just said about being a default guy. I'm in the default of 20 years ago. That's where I am. And I just have to accept that I'm a complete Luddite on that front now.
Yeah, I do agree with what you say about chasing the luxury experience from 1990, not the what it would be if it was made in 2022 experience. I think the idea of adding a hard disk onto your Amiga or Atari ST, or having a second drive on my CPC and all those kind of things, the proper official monitor and so on. Those are the things I want to do. Or in fact, the Orpheus II. The Orpheus II doesn't have anything that our old PCs could not have had, because we could have had a Gravis ultrasound, we could have had a real Sound Blaster without the DOS drivers, we could have had the OPL3, so we could have had all that, and we would need the better sound equipment and so on, but it was possible. So it's for me, it's about creating the kind of what would happen if my dad was rich back in 1990.
I should add, by the way, Dave, this is our tradition of having a correction in the show. I mentioned running CPM on the C64, but it just occurred to me you do need a Z80 processor to run CPM. So you have to have a cartridge with a second processor in to do that on the C64. I'm sure anyone else can comment. I'd love to know what alternative OSs there were for the C64 in the comments. So any listeners that want to contribute, let us know, other than the one that appears when you turn it on and says ready.
So going back to the original story about the C64, I think it does make the C64 more usable, and I'm wondering if I'll end up upgrading my C64 to add more memory and a flash disk and so on, because there is an enormous library of games with the C64.
Okay.
It was properly active in selling from 82 onwards until it was discontinued in 1994. I know that by 1994, the commercial life of games had petered off a little bit, but there was hundreds of thousands of games, hundreds and thousands, not hundreds of thousands, hundreds and thousands of games across the lifetime of it. So I think got to be more than any other 8-bit system. So there are so many games. So the C64 is maybe that C64
The
is sitting in
Spectrum's
PCs just now will end up.
Spectrum will give it a run for its money in the number of titles, not necessarily the quality, but the number.
But they're different. There's a big difference. I feel there's a difference between Spectrum and C64 games. C64 had all the hardware to help it, but Spectrum had a bit more raw power than the
Oh,
the
no
C64
doubt. But if we're
in terms of
talking about
processing.
the quantity of games available, it's up there. Yeah.
But I don't know that this project doesn't seem to be aimed at that at all. Doesn't seem to be aimed at creating a launch system for to make things easier for C64 games. But if people start using it that way, maybe it'll catch on. Maybe if it gets popular, it'll end up the same way that we do with PP on the ST and WHD loaded games on the Amiga.
And we may well be just over-analysing this. This was a project that someone wanted to do. They started in 2016. Yeah. They've achieved what they wanted to create and said, look, this is possible. Would you believe it? Yeah. So that's all that matters, really, isn't it? They've achieved their goal, and we can all look in and see it and go, cool, that's nice.
Yeah.
Time now for last week's community question of the week from episode 85. And just a reminder, the question was, what video game music do you think is excellent, but just happens to be attached to a less than stellar game? So we're looking for great music on average or poor games. Where can we find unexpectedly good video game music? Maybe include a link if it appears on YouTube so we can all have a listen. So, Dave, do you want to read out the first and top answer here?
Yeah. So the first one is from Protech438, and he says a prime example would be the in-game music by Martin Galway in Miami Vice for the Commodore 64. You could spend hours listening to those SID tunes that adapt the original Miami Vice theme by Jan Hammer. I love the original Miami Vice theme by Jan Hammer. I've not heard the C64 implementation. So,
do you think that would get us a? Do you think that would get us a copyright strike? I think it might do.
Probably would.
Well, Duncan will find out. If it doesn't, you'll hear it now.
2 seconds.
If it does, the link is right there on the community question of the week, so you can go and have a listen to it. That's a good shout. But, Martin Galway starting from a strong foundation there with the Jan Hammer tune.
That's lovely.
I'll have to have a listen and see how much he's adapted it. The next answer comes from Krills. Krills _. The underscore is important in the name there. He says, I love video game music, and I think the best places to look aren't necessarily in poorly received games, but rather in the hidden gems of a console's library. And oftentimes,
answered a different question then.
Yeah, he said, screw your question, guys. I'm going to answer it the way I want to.
Fair enough.
And oftentimes, I think it's in the largest libraries where the most gems are lurking, since the deluge of software releases during the console's lifespan naturally make it easier to let smaller or lower tier releases slip through the cracks. Fair comment. The PS1 and PS2 are great examples given the breadths of their respective libraries, as well as the large amount of exclusives that never left Japan. I never tire of scouring those Japan-only releases for some musical surprises. One soundtrack that I discovered a few years back and still enjoy playing to this day, okay, we're nearly there, we're nearly getting to an answer to the question, is the Japanese exclusive PS1 game.
Is this your story of the week, Neil? Is this your article?
Okay, they've picked a game, and I'm going to just massacre the pronunciation. A game on the PS1 called Kaze no Notum.
Sure. Yeah.
Kaze no Notum. The game itself
Are you Japanese?
Is a hot air balloon simulator. And while I haven't played or ever owned a copy myself, it's on my list to one day experience, undoubtedly. From the footage I've seen online, it's as quaint and laid back, and it's got a low poly aesthetic. Stop giggling, Dave. It's all about a hot air balloon ride. But as mentioned, it's the very relaxed, a bit jazzy and 90s groove of a soundtrack that's worth your time. There's a link there posted to the OST for anyone else who wants to enjoy the gentle, groovy, laid-back, jazzy sounds of a hot air balloon ride on the PS1. I'm intrigued.
Let's click on the link.
Should we click on the link and have a quick listen to that?
I'm thinking that's kind of music in a hot air balloon, nice and relaxing.
Yeah.
The cover art looks like the cover of Coral Draw.
It does.
The PS1.
Yes.
Yeah, I feel that. There's a bit of sort of Pilot Wings jazzy vibes to it.
It works.
Nice.
Yeah.
Chris, do you want to read out the third answer?
Yeah. Can I just move
there on the screen?
To the side, thank you. Right, so the last answer this week is from Guybrush Loves Tesla. Sure. For me, some of the music coming from Japanese arcade publishers, Sega and Taito, was amazing. They had their own in-house bands, SST Band, Sega and Zuntata.
You're asking me.
Yeah. By Taito. Anyway, who became so popular that they even performed live shows. Two of my favorites would be the song Duddy Mulk from the Ninja Warriors. Who names this? Is this answer a setup here? The game was not amazing, but I was happy to keep shoveling coins into the arcade cabinet just to hear the song. It was a few years later that the Spectrum magazine...
More Mulk, Daddy.
Stop it. I'd commentate with game music on that was one of the songs. Many years later, I discovered that the live performance of the song on YouTube. Did you guys put this in here? I'm going to skip past Daddy Mulk. There's a link to Daddy Mulk in there. Am I missing a joke here?
I don't think we're missing it.
Am I missing a joke?
Hear you say Daddy Mulk today.
Not ever in the history of my life. Oh,
Stop
dear.
saying it.
And I've been telling family and friends about this podcast I'm involved in. They should really tune in and have a listen. Oh dear. Right. Okay. I'm going to skip past the rest of the talk about that. Magical Sound Shower from Outrun. Fantastic choice. Well done. But not a bad game, though. So that kind of misses the point of the question.
Good.
Are we done?
Outrun doesn't really count.
It doesn't, no, because it's a good game.
Ninja Warriors wasn't a bad game either. I guess it depends which port you were port you were playing.
I didn't hear this question last week, but Kelly X, which I think I've mentioned before, terrible game. Fantastic loading music on the Amiga. Yeah, cool.
There we go. Right. So, Dave, why don't you tell us what the question of the week is for this week?
Yeah. So this week's question of the week is, what can you put in a Reddit comment that will have us in tears when we're trying to read it out? So this week's question is, we've talked this week about the Orpheus II and also about peripherals and add-ons and upgrading your C64, and we touched about the Amiga and Atari ST. What's the dream peripheral that you never had back in the day that you'd love to have now?
Good question. So can you give us some examples, Dave? Have you got one in mind that you would have liked?
So the one that you actually ended up having, I know that you told us about, is the sidecar addition to your Amiga that had the CD-ROM in it.
The A570.
Yeah. For me, for the Atari ST, it would have been a hard drive. They were eye-wateringly expensive back in the day. I had no chance of getting the hard drive, the mega file for the Atari ST.
Awesome. Right. So that question of the week will be up on our subreddit, which is at reddit.com/r/this week in retro, where you can also submit any news stories that you might like us to talk about. You can see last week's question of the week with the links to those songs, including Daddy Mulk and anything else. Sorry, I just wanted to set Dave off again. And we appreciate all the contributions that you make over on the subreddit, and look forward to reading the stories. And we will be back again next week. Thank you as always for listening. Chris and I are off to enjoy the cave for the rest of the day, and we'll see you next time. Take care, everyone. Bye-bye.
Bye.
So this week's question of the week is, do you think Dave is really a Scottish, Or is he really a German pretending, like Chris? I didn't see that until now. Did you type that in, Neil, as we were talking there?
Yeah, no, I typed it in this morning because you had an equally stupid one in there earlier. Can't remember what it was.
Oh, dear.
This Week in Retro was presented by Neil from RMC The Cave, Chris from 005 AGIMA, and Dave. It was produced by me, Duncan Styles. The podcast version of the show is available through your favourite podcaster, including Apple Podcasts and Spotify, and the video version is available on the This Week in Retro YouTube channel.
Join our community subreddit at r/thisweekinretro to suggest and vote on the stories we cover on the show. If you watch This Week in Retro on YouTube, please give us a like and subscribe to help us reach new viewers.
If you enjoy our show and would like to support it, then please check out the link to our Patreon page in the show notes or description. Thank you for listening, and we'll see you next time for more up-to-date news for out-of-date tech.